Thank you so much, Smriti and team at MAMI for making this happen. What a rush. Like, I feel like I've just prepared for an exam I know all the answers to. Like, nerd alert. Like, I feel like I was so ready to go on and start speaking about something that I'm so massively in love with. So, thank you so much because I have genuinely benefited from actors, directors, creators speak about their processes. And I hope that this is a session that will be helpful, if not helpful, engaging and amusing to some. So welcome everyone. Welcome to my creative brain. To start off with, the first two movies that I did, I was 17, 18, and I wasn't quite able to find the right word, or why is it that it felt like my calling, and thanks to my incessant digging for people who would speak about their craft, like I soon found it, but I was not happy with how I was putting it. I was like, is it study of characters? Is it study of storytelling? I just didn't know. And what is it? What is this excitement and this very rewarding journey that makes a two-dimensional character on page as real as another person right next to me of flesh and blood? So I kept looking for the word, and then there it is. The incomparable Kate Blanchett spoke in one of her interviews, and she used the word anthropology. And I was like, bingo, that's it. I know it's a big word, and I had to, find the definition. I had to go for a dictionary then. Smart. So I realized that by definition, it's like a scientific study of human beings, right? So here we have all the tools in our art form, right, in performance, all the tools that we can use for a creative study of human beings, their behavior in terms of their, in the backdrop of their socio-economic political background or their upbringing, nature versus nurture, you have it. So that's what primarily excites me about the art of character building, so to speak, for this session. And it continues to fascinate me because in its execution, what it becomes is, it becomes everybody's. It's by far the loneliest and the most collaborative work that I've ever done. Like, it's polar opposite in that sense, and it's extremely gratifying. So, like Smriti said in her introduction, I am definitely, admittedly, an unapologetic method actor. And it's a very controversial thing to say, even in acting community, really, because you're judged very harshly when you say you're a method. There's so many quotes and quotes going on. So there are a lot of ways that people have understood or misunderstood what method means. For me, it's very simple. It's just a range of skill set and learning techniques or training techniques that will help you put out a sincere performance. That's it. So it's just whatever it be for you. If for you it means throw away the script, just go with the flow, that's a method too. So it just so happens that I am an information junkie. Like, for me, it's all about like scribbling it down and writing it down and finding more things. And see, I'm not a born actor, and I have no idea what that means. So I do, but have a certain aptitude for study, and the study for human behavior, psychology, of human race, of storytelling. And I feel like if I could acquire a certain skill set to sort of channel my natural inclinations of understanding of people and the instincts that I get, then I'd be able to give a better output. And it's not about me, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's at the end of the day, it has to be primarily about what the audience's takeaway is. So I just have to find out what works best for me to give that output. Now, it's a bonus and a very selfishly gratifying thing that I benefit a lot too, but that's my thing, and that's what I'm here to share with you, what I get out of it as well. So now this work has the ability to expand your emotional, your mental, to a good extent your physical and your psychological boundaries. It kind of reshuffles everything in your mind. And sort of then when it falls together again, you have a whole different landscape of understanding of self and others. And for me, empathy is something that I have, over the period of the last 14 years, understood the biggest takeaway for me is from this job. And my method really nourishes that journey for me. This is something that I have made just so that I can explain how I've broadly categorized the method that I go for. It's just over a period of 14 years that I figured this is what I usually do. It's not something I've read of one particular book or one particular technique. So as you can see, in the middle, there's a circle that says script and director. The second concentric circle is self and research. And the third one is collaboration and execution. The three circles that I've created here, the three categories, apply in different tangible points through the pre-production, through the under-production period, and through the post-production period. Now, a director or a writer reaches out to me and gives me a narration or hands over the script to me. It is the first hook that I look for, or what speaks to me that I don't even have to go searching for, is what is the dramatic need of the character in the film. No other detail stands out. No other detail stays back after a narration for me, but what is the conflict? Like, what is her inner conflict, and how does the resolution get attached to the external conflict in the story itself? Like, how does it fit into the script well? So once I've understood that, then there is time invested in reading and rereading the script as many times as possible, and whatever material your director or writer gives you. For the initial projects, I used to have a bound script given. And eventually I started working with creators who would work with me in a way where there would be a synopsis or a one-line order given to me. And initially that kind of, I was a little, oh no, what do you mean? Do I have all these pages to go through? But then there was that leap of faith that you take with the creator when you know that you're on the same page about what is the essence of the story you're going to get, and the actor has gotten it. Then the creator kind of trusts you to be free himself or herself to create it as they go. So it becomes a self-evolving piece, this thing called script. So then you build it along with the creator. So the more and more you read it, the more and more the truth and the essence of the script gets ingrained in your mind, then the character will lead you to the improvisation. You don't have to think of, hey, what is the smart thing to do in this? What would look cool? Things don't go out of the character anymore. Nothing stays just on the surface, and everything comes from within. And that's a leap of faith too. So I end up just deliciously gorging on the script or whatever material that I get. That's the first step. So the second one, as you can see, is self and research. Now, self, like according to the script, you would also see what do you need to do with your physicality to change, to work on. What are some of the physical habits of your character? Like, for example, there are certain fabrics that I'm used to as Parvathy. Certain fabrics in your house, your bed sheet, something as simple and small, so to speak, as that makes a lot of difference for me when I work on a character. And I would like to know what kind of clothes does she wear and what is the fabric that she feels on her skin. That helps me during the performance to sort of settle into a different space, which is not Parvathy. Then otherwise, of course, there's a training if required you have to take. If the character looks a certain way or behaves a certain way because of their lifestyle or job, or, if they're a dancer or an athlete. So you do that. That's one kind of research on self, or training of self you got to do. Then the other one is a lot more texture, like who, what, when, and hows of it all. There's no question here is wrong, is what I think. Even the foolish ones, especially, because I personally feel the need to flush it all out. With the first wave of questions, usually it's inflicted on the director or the writer, which they love, I have to say. But the socio-economic political background of the story and where the character fits is an extremely important research for me. Now, does all of that make it to the final execution? Not really. But for me, there is a certain kind of absorption that happens, which I can then trust to come to my aid when required. Also to say that there are these kind of things that you study and you stay in focus with. I feel like sometimes the script doesn't talk about it, the performance or the performer doesn't speak about it, but the audience gets it. like it's very intangible. It's kind of this compound effect of everything that you chart out in a character that finally comes out in a very organic way. You can feel it. And I've felt that in performances when I've seen on screen. As much as research as you do, I've learned this the hard way. Do not cling to it. Because I've realized that staying loose with your research is what helps you grow and find these little magical dots. The third aspect of my wonderful diagram is collaboration. This is where the magic gets more and more real. This is where the lonely part gets chucked out and you have your whole team to come for your help, right? There is something beautiful in collaboration, which is the elasticity of it, you know. And I seek this a lot from my team. Like I feed off their energy. It's mostly that I feel that I'm sensitive to my director's voice, their energy, their moods, you know. And I try to have more and more conversations with them. But I realized that over a period of time on set, during any kind of collaboration, you need to have a thick and a thin skin. It's very important to retain the focus on the character because there are too many things when you're thin-skinned so that you can absorb everything. You also get affected by the noise around you. Like everybody is doing different things in their department, and there's a lot to learn from every single department also. But if you're also not sort of treading the balance of thick and thin skin, you'll be constantly blown away and you're absorbing everything that does not really feed your character well. Trust is a major factor for me. So when they give me something for me to shapeshift, a great space of trust and growth would really help me. Now, I would love me a director who would speak as much as I do and like spend time, wondering with the what about this, how about we do that. But I've also worked with certain others who have a certain solitude to their technique. Like they may not be able to verbalize exactly what works on screen, but they can only tell you once you perform. And that is one other kind of experience altogether. I find there are two kinds of directors that I find, again, broadly put, okay. One is somebody who would particularly enjoy bringing the actors on set before the shoot begins and ask them to have a go at it, right? A rehearsal. You're not wearing the costume of the character, you've not even learned probably your lines, probably got the scene just then. And the cameraman and everybody are just watching you perform. And you're like this little toddler, right? Stumbling across, falling, you don't know exactly where anything should go. And then they would set up the camera accordingly. And I've really enjoyed that process in certain films. And then there are other people who'd call you after the shot is entirely set. And I have to tell you, that is brilliant as well. Because there is that leap of faith, like they know that you'll come and you will sort of settle into the space that they visually need to create and still not sort of stifle the character that you're playing. So what I do, a little hack that I found, is that I always reach at least like 15 to 20, if not half an hour before my call time. I do that because I go there and I loiter, I get used to the energy, I see them setting up shots. It makes me comfortable as long as I'm not sort of, attacking their space. That's what happens on set with the director in terms of building a character while a shot is being set. That's the broad two categories. But the third and the final category, obviously, are the most unfortunate ones to work with, are the ones who are selfish, who think this is an ego competition. So with whom you do not get a chance to build at all, They think that it's a race and where you're like, you're not reaching anywhere if you're not coming with me either. So then there are certain hacks that you find, because at the end of the day, again, what I said earlier, you have to come back to making sure the integrity of your character and the performance stays intact. So this is the third and the final circle that I spoke about in my diagram, is the collaboration part of it, which brings me to something that I'm so grateful to share with you. These are going to be clips from the films that I've done. I've tried to select films which work well in terms of putting these things into context, this process that I have told you into context. And maybe I can share a couple of anecdotes with you as well. But before we go into it, the first movie I did was Out of Syllabus. The movie's name is Out of Syllabus, and it released in 2006. And I went with the notion that acting is just be yourself. Just be yourself, learn the lines, just say it. And if you guys ever do watch it, that'll be a great way to watch a terrible performance. Not to be harsh on myself, but that was very amusing to watch it at some point. Like, I have to say, with all self-kindness and self-love, I would say this. And then I got to do my second film, Notebook. So that was my very first time working as an actor and engaging with a character and her story. We had this workshop before the shoot started, and I remember the writers would like take turns spending time with each one of us, and we were all selected from like a grand audition, and spending time about our respective characters. So it was the first time the question of why came across. Like, why does she do this? What is her story? Her parents, her favorite toothpaste? What's her least favorite curry? And I remember sitting there slowly jaw-dropping, because here's a writer talking about a character as if he's talking about me. Like, fascinated that this two-dimensional character suddenly became very real. And I remember saying, according to the story, there is a decision that this character makes, and that has a great impact in the story. And I said, if I was in her place, I would never have done that. Now, this brought me close to the core internal conflict of this character. Now, externally, we know what the storyline is. This is what happens, this is what this person did, and hence the climax. But what drove her to it? And as an audience, I would say that I would have never done that. That's such a wrong decision, right? And the writer asked me, are you sure you would not have done that? If you hadn't gone through what Pooja went through, if you had gone through every single conflict and issues and obstacles in her life, and her backstory revealed that, don't you think you would have done exactly the same? And that was the first time I realized what this job suddenly shifts perspective, right? It's way beyond putting yourself in another person's shoes. It's understanding that judgment always brings up walls. And especially as an actor, for me, I need to now find out reasons that makes her actions justified. And what exactly is justification, right? Like, everything is justified according to us, what we do. So for Pooja Krishna, what she did was right. Like, she didn't know any better. So suddenly it changed for me, it shifted. And this particular clip that you see, it's a minor little moment. That was the first time that I experienced what in execution it feels like to be her and not Parvathy. Because Sarah's character says that we could tell your mother about this situation. And there is a slight bit of hesitation that Pooja takes and says, well, what would she do? She would do the same thing, right? And that's what changes the entire game in the movie. And that's a lie. That's a manipulation that she did right there. And she knows that her friends are not going to question her because, her character is a leader in the film, So whatever she says, everyone, like her best friends, are going to believe. And suddenly she didn't feel like a bad person to me anymore. I'm not judging her. It felt right that she was doing that. So there, the perspective shifted. I'm not on the outside, I'm on the inside. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, why am I mean, it's not about me liking her, but this is interesting, this is new. And that was just the beginning for me. And in terms of collaboration, I want to tell you that if you see the movie, and in the clip, there's a part where Sridevi's character gets up and walks away, and Sarah and Pooja are just turned around and looking at her. I was so petrified to move a little more to see her properly because I was given a mark and I needed to stay right there. And when I watched this again today, I was like, I remember how stuck I was physically. But this definitely, Notebook, was a film that introduced me to the expanse that is character building. The next movie that I did is my first Tamil film, soon after Notebook actually. It's a movie called Poo, Flower. Here you see Mari. Let's talk a little about Mari. Now, Mari is a very non-relatable, very unrelatable character for me. When I was auditioned for her, for this character, I had never met anyone like her. I had never seen anyone like her in my life. Like, her backdrop, her backstory, where she's from, what her job is, nada, nothing. So Shashi sir, my director, who wrote the script based on a short story, called Velodu Poi, used to read out the story to me. And at that point, I didn't even understand Tamil. So language was another thing that I needed to focus on. So the prep really meant going to her native place, where she lives, going to her workplace. Like she works in a firecracker industry, like in a factory where they make firecrackers. And there was a peculiar way that they tie the firecrackers, the long ones, and their hands move in some fast forward while they speak in normal speed. And it took a long time to like learn that. But in learning that, it was not just a skill to show in front of the camera. It was also the thing that I said before about how does Mari spend her time? What is time for her? Started listening to the music that she would listen to. Started imitating Tamil at that point. This is a movie where I had to dub. Thankfully, I could pull it off. But language was definitely a major issue. And whenever I felt a little out of sync, Shashi sir would just come and read the short story to me. Now, it doesn't matter if I understood what exactly the short story was in terms of the language. It's the feel with which Shashi sir always brought me back to the essence of Mari. There's also something very interesting about the character building of Mari is that now here's a girl who is head over heels in love with her cousin. From a very young age, she believes that this is the guy she's going to get married to. But when the movie begins, you see that she's married to someone else, and happily so. Now she somehow has compartmentalized her life, where her love for this man meant that he needs to be happy. Now, acquiring him and possessing him, no, not my problem. Is he happy there? Good for me. Then I can move on too. The journey and the arc then became how she realizes that even her departure from the space did not provide, her loved one a happy life. And that breaks her. And we leave the movie at a space where we don't know how happy Mari is going to be anymore. And we can actually move over to the next one, which is City of God, which is a Malayalam film I did, which has the same thing. Like, I've never met Maradagam, and I've never seen her or interacted with a character like that. So the initial setup is always about going and be in that, like, just go and be in that space. Understand what their space is like. Where do they live? For example, with Maradagam, the first thing that the writer advised me to do was at 6 o'clock in the morning. These are people who have come from Tamil Nadu and settled in Cochin, and they're construction workers. They all get up in the morning at like 5:36. They have oiled their hair, wash it up, put flowers, and have like a tiny little lunch box, and they're ready and waiting for the vehicle to come and take them to the site. So the first thing I did was to go and witness what their movement really is like. And if I get an opportunity to meet somebody and have a conversation with them, spend time with them, that's one major aspect and that's what I did in Poo, which Shashi sir definitely, he facilitated that for me, right? I could go there, live with them actually. Because if I listen to, let's say, Malayalam songs and English songs and Hindi songs, and I've never listened to old Tamil songs, which they jam to, what's their idea of going to a festival? So I needed to know what are their quirks. And then the more and more you pick these details and you put it in that Hermione bag, I don't know what it's called, I should ask a pothead. That really comes
in the Parvathy bag. I think it's the Parvathy bag.
Let's just change it. Thank you. So that's the same thing that worked for City of God as well. Now, there's another kind of, what I would call, I can't relate at all kind of a backdrop. One that is, of course, far removed physically, culturally from who I am, but also in terms of a fantasy that the director brings in. And that brings me to the next clip, which is Marianne. And that's from a song in Marianne called Nenjere. And this is interesting because, see, there is an idea of love and its power to feed the resolve of someone to survive, survive death, So that's an idea that Bharat Bala, the director, had come with, and it was a very indulgent script in that sense. And I did the same routine, right? I went to the place where a character like Panimalar would live. What are the kind of clothes they could wear? What are the kinds of activities that they do? What's her job? Whom does she live with? All of that was done. But then it was then it was taken like a notch higher, like a notch like away from the regular understanding of a character. Now, whether for a particular look or in effect, I wouldn't know. For aesthetic, Manimala doesn't really resemble any other fisherwoman in that space. She has straight hair. It's like, slick back, tied behind. She wears like big flowers here. She has extra coal and she has deep neck. Not usual to see anybody like that. Like, this definitely is a standalone character. And then my job would then be to build the character in its execution, in its performance, or in the feeling and the emotions of it, to make her as relatable as possible, along with the vision that the director wishes to bring. Now, I remember, this is the place where like directors do like different things. They give you the script, but they can also give you things like bits of music. A.R. Rahman, who did the music for this one, and there is a song called Nature Avalirundal, and the basic music bit was shared with the team before the shoot even started. I remember the essence of what their love is and their separation is was constantly meditated upon after I got this piece of music. So that's about Marianne. We can move on to the next one. And this one also has an element of fantasy going with that theme, is Charlie. Tessa, meet Tessa for this one. Now, Tessa has wings under her feet, people. Like, her internal conflict in the film is that she cannot and does not want to stay still. She doesn't want to stay put. And she's left her job. She doesn't have any intention of settling down, marriage, and she just wants to be on the move. And obviously her family has great issues with that, and except her grandmother, nobody else approves. And I want to take you to an experience with the director when he came to meet me, Martin Prakat. And this is also to say that what kind of a collaboration, worked well there. Now, here's a director who came with the script and read out the entire script and told me very sweetly, like, please don't ask me questions. And I was like, well, I don't know where to take my questions. He's like, I don't know. I'll give you my writer's number. I just know how to show, okay? And, I've worked with Martin Prakat before also for photo shoots and all. And I found that extremely adorable. And I was like, it's okay. But I was like, but why does Tessa go behind Charlie? I don't get it. This was the first meeting, okay? He just couldn't find the right words. And he did something so interesting. We were in a hotel room, and he took a small little bottle of distillery water bottle, which is 500 ml. And there was a bigger one, almost finished, but a bigger 1 liter one. And he just put them on the table and said, the 500 ml is Tessa, okay? And the 1 liter is Charlie. 500 ml wants to become the 1 liter. Simple. I don't need any more explanation from this director. I got the point. And I know now in the most interesting way that this is what drives her forward. Now, how Tessa's internal conflict relates to her search for Charlie is shown in the film. How does her behavior change with each person that she meets along the way? How that changes, her dynamic changes, was also mapped out along with the team. Costume department had a lot to do with bringing a certain element of fantasy to who Tessa is. Now, Tessa, we can all kind of relate to the vagabond nature. I mean, I definitely do. A lot of people have mistaken that maybe Tessa is exactly like me. Not. But what happens here is that Kerala is not exactly a layer weather kind of a place. Like, it's not a place where we wear 3-4 layers and that works for us. But we still went ahead using different layers for the character, and that adds an element of flight in every movement of hers. Along with Charlie, as you can see, there's an element of flight applied through costumes. And before the first shot was taken and we did a couple of rehearsals, something felt really missing. And Samira Sanish, who's the costume designer, I remember she came and she said, what do you think of a nose pin? And I said, sure, let's try something on. And we tried a lot of them on and nothing really seemed to make an effort, a difference. And then she said, I have this broken button with me. If you want to just stick that on your nose and see, and there you see it, guys, that's a broken button from a shirt on my nose there. That's not a nose pin. And then we had to like keep it safe because we can't lose this, Oh, Parvathy is sweating, bring the glue. So it was very interesting. This is again how different departments add to the final touches of who the character is. And like I'm wearing extensions there. I had short hair at the time. And again, to add to the element of flight and waviness and it was a very visually indulgent film as well, and beautifully so. The art director Jayashree created a whole world of installation art for Charlie, and Tessa just kind of fits into that. She just gets that grammar, and that was an interesting character to create in terms of how to again sort of weave fantasy elements into a character while staying relatable. This is Samira. It's a woman whose life is charted out and mapped out based on the men in her life. Now, how she comes out of it and what her core conflict is. Like, our initial discussion in terms of character building, at the time I don't even know if she was named yet, but this is a woman who was born into a family. Now she's a daughter, and she's taught to, she takes a professional course and she becomes a nurse. And now the next thing is for her to pay off the loan for that. So there is that responsibility. She gets married off as expected. Then she has a child as expected. Now she has to come back, and then she becomes the ex-wife and she has the responsibilities of that. Then she has to make more money. For that, she has to get married again. So then she becomes a wife again. And then she becomes pregnant again. And then there is this whole new dynamic with her son from the previous marriage as to what will she say? How answerable is she really to even the son from her previous marriage? Now, Samira is caught in a web of problems. This is not a character that you see smile. And that was very interesting even during shoot, is that I spent days being Samira where every second spent for her, every waking moment is about how will I fix this issue? How will I get this done? How will I do that? And she's not pitying herself. She's not on that path but she's just very focused on resolving her issues, and she'd do whatever it takes. So that became the starting point, and the aspect of her being a nurse, and then what happens in the latter half of the film and the conflict, which then ties up really well to, how she is, how she is liberated from this nature of being answerable to her son even. That was charted out later on in the script. And that's when the collaboration form again comes in, where working with Mahesh, the director, who's also an editor, so there is incredible clarity and precision in which he would communicate what we need to say in this particular shot, in this particular scene. And Sanu, the cameraman, who is like this invisible ally for you. Like, the camera can be anywhere, and the freedom given to you is like, you do what you have to do, I'll catch it. That's my job. And that was a very interesting way to collaborate with the cameraman too, because it was very, very freeing for an actor to move around. And by this time, in whatever I've studied in character building, I'd gotten to a point where the questions were less asked on set. It was mostly all done and dusted way before we start shoot. And it's only when I reach like I hit a wall that then I request for that time off, even if the shot is set. And so generously given in this particular movie, where I can go and sit aside and discuss what my insecurity in performance is, like where I may feel I fail. And trust me, there are so many insecurities that comes, because you may know everything, you may know the backstory, you may know everything, but in that moment, it's something beyond your control really, what comes out and what is not. You may be thinking everything, feeling everything, but it doesn't reflect. So I've had certain such moments in Takeoff, but being Samira, as exhausting as it was physically, but emotionally, I found through her journey, through creating that arc for her, the strength always came to the fore. But again, creating Samira came from a space of a fictional idea of what a woman's conflict is. Moving on, this is a character that I would say is relatable. Now let's come into spaces where, again, relatable is a broad, like general, stroke here. Kareeb Kareeb Single is a movie I got a chance to play in Hindi. Jaya's journey was interestingly highly relatable to me. And to be honest, it's the most relatable characters that I've heard from the audience as well. Um, I had the fortune of collaborating with Tanuja and Ghazal from the get-go through the script. I remember they came and met me, and it was a full an hour, 2 hour long narration. And I remember sitting and laughing, not like laughing at Jaya or a Yogi, but the idea that these moments are so light and yet there is so much depth in their reality, so relatable, that there's no way I pounced on it, and I had to play Jaya. Working with Tanuja, the constant reminding, apart from many other things, was to always understand what her backstory really is. The first 5 to 10 minutes in the film is setting up where Jaya belongs, what her job is, where does she live, who are the people in her life. And that was enough, in fact, for me to work on for the rest of the film. Now, the events happen in the rest of the film for the character to form an arc and resolve her problem. What is her problem? Her problem is what's next in life. She was widowed at the age of 22, 23. Then instead of focusing on her, she immediately ended up spending her entire grief into a focus on her brother and on her family. Now, her brother has moved away to the US to study. Now, she doesn't have a project anymore. So now there is no distraction. She has to now focus on herself. And that's equally liberating and irritating for her. And it's a grief that she hasn't found closure yet with. The loss of her husband is not something that she has dealt with. She's dealt with in a way that she's held it close. And that's not a space where anybody else can come and take away. And that sprouts from fear as well. But at the same time, you see these women all around. Like I personally would say I'm also someone like that. I mean, I have my strong suits. Like, you'll never know what's going on behind. What are my insecurities? What are the things that drives me to make certain decisions, which may seem very unreasonable? She goes on this trip with Yogi. Why? Exactly. Like, you'll never be able to logically argue 1 + 1 = 2. That's why we all do these things. So these conversations were heavy and very well-intentioned and well done during the course of the film. And Irfan Khan, the actor, of course, I mean, with whom I could keep churning the script into, better butter, just keep going on at it. And that definitely helped stay with the focus of what her inner conflict is and never forget that trait. And then let the events that affect Jaya organically affect the performance. This is one other performance where you don't chart out. I mean, I never chart out expressions, but you don't chart out the shock. You don't chart out the annoyance. It happens to her for the first time. And in relation to her past, it all sort of organically flows, So that's what happened with Kareeb Kareeb Single.
You're creating a body language of a character, whereas whenever you get out of that character, I don't even know what that means. You have to go back to the body language of Parvathy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. Parvathy is holding one particular kind of phone, or Parvathy has a certain kind of bag. She knows where the chai ka patti is kept in her kitchen. But the thing is, she's familiarizing herself with all of this when she's creating this character. First of all, how does the separation in real life come between you and this character? And the second aspect of that is, what if you're doing 2 films at the same time? Then there are 3 people in your head.
That is tricky, which is why I avoided doing that for, I think, 13 years or the 14 years that I have worked, which is the last year, I would say. I never do 2 movies at a time, Smriti. I mean, I think I'll implode if I do that. I don't have what it takes to do 2 films at a time. I don't know how to be with one character itself is like pretty much a relationship. So I don't know, but the closest I've gotten to, I'm answering the second part of your question first so that it makes sense when I answer the first. Virus, Uyare and Vartamanam, a movie that has not released yet. These are 3 films that was shot back to back. And I'll tell in detail how the even preparation got affected or worked eventually in the character's favor. I remember Uyere was fine. It was just one movie at a time. And within 2 days, I moved to Virus. And then I was Dr. Anu. And then I was Dr. Anu for about a month, month and a half. And then immediately it was about 10, 15 days later, it was, Faiza. And I think by May or June, by the end of like last year, I just always go through this even after one movie is done, that I do need a break for like 3 to 4 months. And I think I benefit as much as the preparation time as the, undoing of it. Like when I reach home and then there is this vegetating period that I mean, it's not like everyone can afford to do that. Not every actor can afford to do that. Sometimes even I had not been able to afford to do that. But what happens is that I don't really get the entirety of the experience if I don't do it. If I keep sponging up and then I don't bring it out, then I don't know what is left from the character, from that experience in me. I don't get an objective sense of it or a subjective sense of it even. So I make sure that there is a break in between. And I'm always very nervous if two films are shot very close together. Not because I'm scared Parvati may come to the surface or the other character may come to the surface. I mean, I will work hard not to make that happen. But the noise in my head eventually does wear me down. I mean, personally for me, that has been an issue. I've seen actors do it like left, right, center, doing 5 films at a time. And I'm like, that's incredible brain capacity that I do not have. So that's the second part of your question. The first thing is, how do I do it? Is usually this break. And there is a lot of preparation that I've done in writing. And what happens often is that the full undoing or the finishing of letting go of a character happens maybe a year or two later.
Two of your most successful performances, which you've done, which is Uyere and Virus.
And it brings me to Uyere again. Again, another very incredibly relatable girl, Pallavi. I mean, even though I would say that Pallavi is not a character, when I heard about her first, from the first, like it was a phone call really, and said this one line of the story and the character, and I immediately said yes. Director Manu was associated with Rajesh Pillai, who's a dear friend of mine who passed away. And we had immense faith in this project because, as you can see, Pallavi is someone who is representative of, and they're just fictionally speaking, like she's someone who goes through an abusive relationship, and while she chooses to walk out of it, is attacked for having chosen her freedom. And it's incredible. While making the film, obviously we did everything that I've spoken about, right? Like we've tried to figure out where she was born, her socio-economical political spaces, her costume, prosthetic makeup, all of that. But what we weren't prepared was when the movie released and people started relating to it, that it's not only acid attack that this spoke about. This spoke about general abuse and the overcoming of it, and coming into being an individual that really spoke to not just women, really, to a lot of people who've gone through abuse. And for me, I think Pallavi again came at a time where I was picking up pieces and figuring out how to put myself together to be strong enough to continue on my, what they call war path, but the path that I can't avoid, like, because that's my truth. And we had incredible discussions about this during this film with the writer and the director. Mostly it was about the relationship with Govind. Now, the relationship with Govind is toxic from the get-go. We can see that he's someone who continuously needs to control every aspect of her being, and calls that love. And she had been feeding that for a very long time. I was excited about this one particular scene before shoot where the attackers, Govind's father, comes and meets Pallavi's father and says that, if you don't drop the case, I'm going to lose my son. My son is going to lose his future, and, goes on very, very sincerely. And Pallavi comes back home from this class that she was trying out. And initially, the very initial draft, there were a few lines written. And then we kind of figured out, like in a group discussion, we were all like, what if she doesn't say anything? What if she just comes and sits because she's exhausted? Like, how about we use the tool of silence instead of dialogues here? Would that speak? And we obviously could add dialogues if it didn't work after the performance, but it worked out well for everyone, for the creators and for me during performance, that the anger and the resolve and and of what she's lost is just revealed through an action. So those creative decisions, when made together with the director and the writer, are very exciting for me. So that's what happened with Uyare. And Uyare again had another aspect with the director, is that very quickly, the day before we started shooting, we were walking the corridor of the hotel where we did our prosthetic makeup, and I'm like, okay, Manu, I'll see you tomorrow. And then some aspect of some scene was shown, and what was discussed, and he said something that made me realize that, oh my God, this is so not how I've understood Pallavi. And I freaked out. I was like, wait a second, you mean to say that she said this to Govind because she wants to? Because I thought she never really wanted to, but she was like managing him. And he's like, wait a second, how did you understand that scene? And we both had this like deer in the headlights expression in that corridor. And it was like really late in the night, and we had to start to shoot early in the morning. But this is again another great collaborative space to build a character, right? Like you get on set in the next morning, and whoever knows Malayalam here will be like, yeah, like you'll be like, yaar, kya karenge hum? Baith ke baat karte hain abhi. Like we'll figure it out. And that's again the sort of space where it's like we have to figure it out before the first shot is taken.
We did speak about the fact that how do you create characters that you don't have a reference point to, or are a figment of somebody's imagination, or characters that you can identify with, find resonance with, but you still want to create their life. But then you've also played characters that exist, that are there. That exactly. And the thing is that you can. What has been that process like? Like, do you meet them? Do you talk to them? Do you read about them? Because there's a living person in front of you that you can source from.
Yeah, all of it. Virus, it's a brilliant example to say. I remember watching the film and coming out, and we had a second show as well to attend, and I couldn't go watch it because it was so potent, this film. And so I was given the role of Dr. Anu, and this is based on a doctor who worked during the first Nipah outbreak, and she is a community medicine doctor. Now, I personally didn't know, as many people didn't know, what a community medicine doctor really is. And they are, eventually I figured out through conversations with us, like they're really looked down upon in the medical community too. Like, because they're not clinical doctors, they don't like have an office, and they don't treat diseases immediately. But what they do is study how it spreads. It was the first time, I think last year, again from Uyare, it was a day that I got before I became Dr. Anu. From Pallavi to Dr. Anu. It was the most stressful time that I have had in my career, because all I did is I went to the set, and they were already shooting, and I just wanted to understand what the set's energy is like. And we did our look test, and I got the doctor's number, and I went to meet her. And I went to meet her in her house, and just understood what her surroundings are like, her children, her husband. And she so generously shared all her notes with me, and so I started taking pictures of her hair clip, to like her nails, to like what kind of conversation she has with her children, like everything. I was lapping it up, because also I was a little paranoid, because I felt like I might not be a good student if I only have a day. And then the next day she was sweet enough to come home and explain exactly how even though she was not asked in the beginning, she was asked to map out the characters, like find out like who the index patient is. That became her own curiosity. Now, Dr. Anu, in the movie though, has a certain attribute to her. Now, the larger conflict is obviously a Nipah virus outbreak and finding the index patient. That is what the main plot line, if we can just say in one thing. But her internal struggle is also that she is someone who has a lot to give, but she's also very nervous about herself. Her self-value has always been undermined so much, and this is very personal for her, right? Like, she's someone who, when she starts explaining, she's a great storyteller, but she will gulp, and she has her palms sweating, and she is so good at her job, but she hasn't yet assumed the confidence of just owning the place. So that was an interesting characteristic to bring. And along the script, even when the main theme or main point of the scene would be the officials discussing how to deal with the issue, the writers always came to me and said, hey, in this scene, maybe the officials have an arc of problem solving. Anu has an added thought in her head that, do I belong here? Is this happening for real? This is amusing because these are things that we feel, right? Like, I mean, if I go to the Oscars, let's just say, I'm sure, like, I'm going to be so poised, guys. Like, I'm going to be, got it. But I'll be like, my heart will be exploding, right? So this is a lot like for Anu. And I realized also, very interestingly, post Anu, that I'm a lot like her. It's just that I have mastered the art of calm on the outside that you guys don't know the buckets of sweat that I shed. So I realized that I've always found ways to connect much later. And I do believe that we are everyone. I can easily be you. Like, it goes again straight back to that thought that if I were in her place, I really would have done the same thing. So that's why it is. And for me, playing a real character meant that I have a live version. If they are generous enough to share that, I can just imbibe and then use what the director and the writers would say, okay, this we can use in the film. This may be too much of a distraction. This is a little too much to do, but this, yes. So then we can pick and choose. And that was exciting to do for Virus, as well as the other film that I've done where I played a real life character called Innaninde Moidi, where I played a character called Kanjanamala. It was pretty much the same process, yeah.
How does the prep and the investment vary when you're the so-called protagonist and when you're a character actor?
In one sentence, I can say that my prep and my investment doesn't change one bit when it is the number of scenes does not inform my prep time or the investment of it. It's the same thing that you've heard me speak about for every single character, except my understanding of the character's consequence in the larger narrative has to be a little more I think it has to be a bit more in the forefront for me. Because every time I come in and I perform, let's say, for example, we are taking the character from Bangalore Days, Sarah, RJ Sarah, or again, another Anjali Menon film that I got to do was Kude, where I played Sophie. Now, primarily, Bangalore Days is about three cousins. And Kude is about Joshua and Jenny. It's about a brother and sister's story. But how does RJ Sarah becomes of consequence in Arjun's life, and how does Sophie becomes a consequence in Joshua's life, becomes a very, very important plot line for me to hold on to. If I'm choosing a character, like a supporting character in a story, it's primarily because, it's a story that I genuinely believe in. And second of all, it's a writer and director like Anjali is. They make sure that the characters, the supporting characters, are of consequence. Like, if you remove that character from the larger narrative, then there is a big void. So that's also how I sometimes gauge characters that come to me, which are not protagonists, is that if I remove this character that you're offering me, does that affect the plot line at all? Significantly. If not, then why do you have the character? Then I would not dismiss the story, obviously, but I would like to understand that I'm not finding a consequence. Can you please inform me what I have missed? So Bangalore Days is exactly like that, right? How to get both RJ Sarah and Sophie's arc in its entirety in the given space is a collaboration, oh my God, to die for. Especially with a director like Anjali, with whom I've had the chance to, collaborate like that. It's the same process. Like, Kude was shot in November, and I think October, first week of October, when they were doing recce and prep, I went to Ooty and I just stayed for 2 days, and we just had long conversations and food and just talking about Sophie. What did she do when this happened? And these characters have all gone through their own major trauma. And the first thing I remember, Anjali never spoke of, by the way, Sarah as a supporting character. When she speaks to an actor, it's always, I've seen that she takes, she's speaking as if the story is about your character. So there is a fullness to it. You never feel like sort of shortchanged, that your presence is not that important, so the character is not that important.
With all of this method, where does spontaneity, does it get lost?
I am by nature a person who functions better when I have information. So I do, hoard information a lot. But then it was about making sure that that becomes let's say, a tool for me or a weapon for me, than it becoming intimidating my performance. And that I could acquire only over a period of time where, when the execution happens, I don't sit there like on set and read out, this is what she did the previous day, this is what she ate that morning, so no, I can't wear this clothes because, she's put on 2 kilos in the last 2 weeks. Like, I mean, like, these are all notes which inform certain aspect of her backstory. And that becomes so lush and heavy that when I go on set, I let it loose. Then I have to just trust the fact that it will seep out and come through me in my performance when I'm just being her.
Hello, Parvathy. Firstly, it's like a dream come true. And hello. So my question really is, what is the kind of work, because I know that you're a very socially responsible person, what is the kind of work that you do on yourself personally to be able to be so malleable and to keep shape-shifting so often?
Your physical system and your mental system needs to be pliable enough to do that. So I do that for sure. For me, in all the silence and the travel that I do, these are all ways of keeping these muscles, like, ready to go, whichever shape it needs to fit into.
Many times it so happens that whenever a person is acting, on the back of their mind, they have the effect of that shot or that scene, what it will bring in context to the film. So maybe whenever the lenses are changed, what I mean is, when a close-up shot is set, they do something different. On when a master shot is set, their body language is somewhat different. So can I ask Parvathy, what is her method in context to how the lens is set when she is performing a scene?
Actually, when I started off, I was so rigid in my structure, where if it's a close shot, only this part functioned. The rest of it was just like a flailing, like a stand for the head or something. So that was again, like, I mean, I learned on the job. I did not go to a film school. I did not go to an acting school. For a very, very long time, I hadn't done an acting workshop. So I had to learn on the job that. So then what I do is, like, if I, for example, I'm holding a cup and I'm here, but you can't see the cup. Like, during performance, I can very easily leave the cup aside and just act like I'm holding the cup, right? You can't see that I'm not holding the cup. But I'd rather, because the cup has a certain weight that informs the tension on my neck. Like, for me, then that all gets connected, and then that becomes a truthful performance for me, because even this aspect of this strained muscle around my neck, because my shoulder and my arm is holding this cup, also affects the characters, how they see their line, or how they are responding to a line. The set department people are so amazing. They usually come and they say that, "Ma'am, it's close-up scene, you can keep the bag down, because the bag is heavy." And I'll be like, thank you, but I'd rather hold it. And they all, initially they used to have like, what's wrong with her, kind of an expression. And, oh, method. They do that also and go away. But for me, it makes actually, eventually it's worked better in my favor for my performance to not worry too much about, in terms of holding things, right, for the character. Another aspect he mentioned was facial expressions. That is definitely something that I can't say I have a particular pattern or an equation that I apply, but I do know that if it's a long shot, I don't exaggerate an expression unless the director and the people who are seeing it through the viewfinder are saying that it's not getting communicated. Maybe we need to change the angle a little. Maybe we need to put an extra light there. Or maybe you need to do something else to communicate this aspect, because we do need a long shot, but we can't come this close to show what you're feeling. So then I perform accordingly. And other than that, I try to keep it as real as it is on a close-up shot is what you get on a long shot.
Even though I am a young director coming up to you, would you be what would you be looking into? Is it is it my previous work? Is it my short films, or my qualifications where I graduated from, or how is it?
I continue to meet with a lot of debutant directors. I do. And I don't get to work with all of them. And I have worked with first-time directors also, like Bimal. By the way, Nindanda Moideen was his first feature. He's made documentary before. And it was a massive project to take on, a massive character to take on. And where did that leap of faith come in is in the initial meetings. So for me, for what works for me, if I meet you and we have a conversation, let's say, however long you want the narration to be. If you tell me, I can only give you a synopsis and I can work on the script and come back to you, good. Just have to sincerely communicate with me why you want to make the film. Why this story? Why is it important to you? Because I'm here to only add to that. I'm not here to take it and make it mine, right? So unless and until I know what is driving you to make the film, I don't know how I can be a good tool to add and embellish it. How can I can be a good ally to you? So discussions have gone different ways with new directors. Some people tell me a whole narration. They have a shot by shot narration. Sometimes it takes about 2.5 hours, and then there's another 1.5 hours where I'll ask them questions. Some of them have not done well with narration, and they come ahead and tell me, I'm not good with narration. I just want to say that I think I digress too much. So would you just mind reading it? And I would say yes to it. So any kind of just trying to connect with me as an actor to say that this is a project that I genuinely wish to make. And all I need to know is that if I can find that one tar to connect with, where I can now then provide you with that service to make that a reality, that's all I look for. Be it a veteran director or otherwise. I have also met veteran directors with whom I would love to work at a future time, sure. When they tell the story has no connection, or their intention of the making a film has no connection, but their talent I'm very excited to work with eventually. But that particular story may not have made us. So now what do I do? Do I just do it because it's such a big director? Should I just not work with that person? I think then I would be lying to that director. I'd be lying to the project. That'd be a very selfish and a very one-sided approach. And sooner or later I'll be caught, is what I feel. I'll be caught with my lie as well, because I won't be giving my 100%. So
is it like a no right away, or is it like?
Oh yeah, that's very interesting. As crazy as it can get is usually after a sleep, a good night's sleep.
Okay.
I'll be like, adios. I'll talk tomorrow morning. I literally take the sleep on it business. There are movies that I have said that, guys, I'm leaning into it a lot. I feel it's a yes, but I'll call you tomorrow morning. Because when I wake up, the first thing, if I don't even remember I've had a meeting the previous night, it hasn't stayed. And if it is nagging and if it's asking more questions, I know I need to have another meeting with them. And if it's coming up in the sense that I need to know about this character more, man, when can I start working? I know it's a yes. Some movies for sure, I would know right then that I don't think we'll gel together. Thank you. Another time.
Can you share a few female filmmakers or films that inspired you to take the step as a filmmaker?
My shift to want to direct, honestly, was not from the experience of having worked with female directors. It had nothing to do with that. I mean, for me, every single time I work with a director, they're just a director. And they all bring different skill set and understanding and empathetic views or lack of it, there is no gender roles that I apply when I get to choose which director to work with. When I started reading scripts at one point, I started seeing the story. I started seeing how it would pan out. I started discussing, if we had done it this way, what information would go out about the character. Those things about the making of a film started exciting me also. Not while I'm performing, but apart from that. So then I started understanding that, okay, this is definitely exciting me. When somebody's telling me a story, I have an image, a visual grammar coming to me of how I would visualize it. And that became more and more clear as the years passed by. That's the only reason I realized that, okay, let me make a story, let me tell it my way. But honestly, I have great respect for all filmmakers, and the more and more female filmmakers, the better. But this was why the shift or the decision was there. This performance came from that space where I couldn't hold it in anymore. And now I feel the need to tell a story, fail gloriously if I need be, but that need has to come out of my body for sure. But my friends don't listen to me for 2 hours, guys. So I am very happy that you all listened and you all joined in.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye. Have a
Bye.
great evening. Bye.
To watch the conversations on Dial M for films, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jio MAMI Mumbai Film Festival.